By the time Daniel drove away, Maria Bennett had only one question left in her mind. Why had he made sure she could never find her way home? She stood beside the dusty road with her 2 children, watching the red tail lights of their SUV disappear between the desert hills. "Mommy, he forgot us." 8-year-old Lily said it quietly. Maria swallowed hard. Her 6-year-old son, Noah, was already crying. Daniel had left them with 2 backpacks, one half-empty water jug, $63 in cash, and an old envelope he had shoved into Maria's hand before stepping on the gas. "You wanted the inheritance so badly," he had said. "Now you have it." The envelope contained a copy of a probate notice. Maria opened it again with trembling fingers. The property listed inside was an abandoned mining settlement called Black Mesa, 47 miles from the nearest town. Estimated value, $7,500. That was all. A worthless piece of desert, according to the paperwork. Daniel had laughed when she asked him why her late grandmother would leave her such a place. Because even dead people get tired of being useful to you. Then he drove away. Maria looked at the envelope, then at her children. The desert heat pressed against her skin. It was August 18th, 2026, and the afternoon temperature had climbed past 104 degrees. Lily's face was red. "Are we going home?" Maria looked down the empty road. She didn't know how to answer. Her sister had already refused to help her. Her mother had stopped taking her calls. Daniel had emptied their joint account 3 days earlier and told Maria that if she wanted to fight him in court, she could find the money herself. Now she had 2 children, almost no cash, no vehicle, and a property everyone had told her was useless. A pickup truck appeared in the distance. Maria raised one hand. The truck slowed. For a moment, she thought someone had finally come to help. Instead, the driver stopped several yards away, stared at the 3 of them, and shouted through the window. "You're headed toward Black Mesa?" Maria nodded. The man's expression changed. "Then don't stay there after dark." The truck disappeared before she could ask why. Maria looked toward the distant mountains. Somewhere beyond them was the property she had inherited. And somewhere on that property was something Daniel seemed strangely determined to keep her from discovering. Before we continue. 3 months earlier, Maria Bennett had still believed her marriage could be saved. She was 34, worked mornings at a dental office in Tucson, and spent her evenings helping Lily with homework while Noah built elaborate cities from plastic blocks across the kitchen floor. Daniel had been different. He stopped coming home on time. Then he stopped explaining where he'd been. By June, Maria was paying the electricity bill with money meant for groceries. One evening, she found a bank notice tucked beneath a stack of unopened mail. The joint account had been drained. $18,740 was gone. When Daniel came home, she placed the notice on the kitchen table. "What happened to our savings?" He didn't sit down. "I needed it." "For what?" Daniel rubbed his forehead. "Maria, I can't keep doing this." "Doing what?" "Carrying everyone." She stared at him. "You mean the children?" He looked away. That answer hurt more than anything else. 2 weeks later, Daniel moved into an apartment across town. He promised he would keep paying child support. He didn't. Maria picked up extra shifts, but the dental office reduced her hours after losing a major insurance contract. Her rent was $1,285 a month. Daycare cost another $640. By August, she was behind. The eviction notice arrived on a Tuesday. Maria sat on the floor after the children went to bed and calculated everything on the back of an old grocery receipt. Rent, electricity, food, gas, childcare. She stopped when the numbers became meaningless. There wasn't enough. Her sister Karen was the first person she called. "I need somewhere to stay for a few weeks." Silence. Then Karen said, "Maria, you always make everything someone else's problem. My children and I don't have anywhere to go." "I can't get involved." Her mother gave an even colder answer. "You married him, you deal with it." The final blow came from Daniel. He arrived with paperwork and placed it on the table. Aya's grandmother, Evelyn Bennett, had died 8 months earlier. Her will had finally been settled. Maria had inherited Black Mesa. Not money, not a house, not even a functioning business. An abandoned desert ghost town containing several ruined buildings and approximately 640 acres of land. The county assessed everything at $7,500. Daniel leaned against the doorway. "You should sell it." "To who?" "Someone will pay something." "How much?" He shrugged. "Maybe $5,000. Maria stared at the paperwork. $5,000 wouldn't solve her life. But it might buy groceries. It might keep Lily and Noah somewhere safe for another month. So she signed the documents, accepting the inheritance. The next morning, she packed 2 bags. There was nowhere else to go. She loaded the children into Daniel's SUV, believing he was taking them to Black Mesa because he had offered to help her get settled. Instead, hours later, he left them beside that empty desert road. Maria looked at the probate papers in her lap. Then she looked at Lily and Noah, asleep against each other. She started the long walk toward the only place that still belonged to her. Maria walked for nearly 40 minutes before she heard an engine. A faded blue pickup came crawling over the ridge, kicking dust behind it. The driver was an older woman with silver hair pulled into a loose braid. She stopped beside Maria and lowered the passenger window. "You the Bennett girl?" Maria frowned. "I'm Maria Bennett." The woman studied her face for a moment. "Thought you'd be older." She unlocked the passenger door. "Get in. Kids too." Her name was Ruth Calder, 68, and she had spent most of her life running a small repair shop in the nearby town of Red Hollow. She spoke slowly, often chewing the end of a toothpick while she thought. She didn't ask why Daniel had left Maria. She simply drove. Black Mesa was still 11 miles away. The road became narrower as they climbed into the desert hills. Joshua trees stood scattered across the pale ground. Old mining roads split away from the main track, most of them half buried beneath wind-blown sand. Lily pressed her forehead against the window. "Is that where we're going?" Ruth nodded. "That's Black Mesa." Maria looked ahead. At first, she saw nothing but stone. Then the settlement appeared. A row of wooden buildings leaned beneath the harsh sunlight. A rusted water tower stood above them. There was an old church without a roof, a collapsed hotel, a machine shed, and a general store whose faded sign still read, "Mercer Sons, General Goods." Maria stared. "This is mine?" Ruth gave a short laugh. "Technically." They stopped outside the general store. Maria stepped out with Noah in her arms. The building smelled of dust, dry wood, and something faintly metallic. Inside, shelves had collapsed against the walls. Empty bottles covered the floor. An old cash register sat beneath a layer of sand. Ruth walked slowly through the room. "Your grandmother came here once." Maria turned. "My grandmother?" Ruth nodded. "Evelyn Bennett. Summer of 1989. "What? Was she doing here?" The toothpick stopped moving. "Looking for something." "What?" Ruth looked toward the back wall. "Never told me." Maria waited. Ruth finally said, "Your grandmother had a habit of asking questions people didn't like." Then she walked outside. Maria followed. "Ruth, what happened here?" The older woman climbed into her truck. "Mine closed in 1958. "Why?" Ruth started the engine. "They said there was nothing left." She paused, then added quietly, "Funny thing about old mines. Sometimes the people who say they're empty are the ones who don't want anybody digging." The pickup disappeared down the road. Maria stood there with Lily and Noah beside her. She looked back at the general store. The building was falling apart, but now one question wouldn't leave her alone. Why had her grandmother traveled all the way to a dead mining town 37 years earlier? Maria took the children inside. She didn't notice the small iron symbol carved into the wooden floor beneath the counter. Not yet. The first night at Black Mesa was colder than Maria expected. By sunset, the desert heat had disappeared, replaced by a sharp wind that slipped through every crack in the general store. There was no electricity, no running water, no working bathroom. Maria spread 2 blankets across the floor and made a bed for Lily and Noah between the old counter and a stack of broken wooden crates. "Are we staying here?" Lily whispered the question as Maria tucked the blanket around her shoulders. "For tonight." "Where tomorrow?" Maria smiled, though she wasn't sure she could keep the expression on her face. "We'll figure it out." She waited until both children were asleep. Then she counted their remaining water. 1 gallon and a little more. Food consisted of crackers, peanut butter, 3 cans of soup, and half a loaf of bread. Maria sat beside the old cash register and opened the probate documents again. Black Mesa belonged to her. 640 acres, 7 abandoned structures. Estimated value, $7,500. Nothing about the property made sense. Her grandmother had owned it for decades without ever mentioning it. Maria folded the papers and placed them inside her backpack. Then she heard a faint, metallic sound. Clink. She froze. The sound had come from beneath the counter. Maria picked up a flashlight and crouched down. The wooden floor was covered with dust, but one section looked different. Someone had recently disturbed it. She brushed away the dirt with her fingers. A small iron symbol appeared beneath the dust. It looked like a circle divided by 3 crooked lines. Maria touched it. The floorboard moved. She pulled harder. Nothing. Then she noticed an old iron nail beside the marking. It wasn't holding anything together. It was shaped like a tiny key. Maria pulled it free. A wooden panel shifted beneath her hand. Behind it was a narrow compartment. Inside lay a brass key wrapped in yellowed cloth. Maria stared at it. There was also a folded piece of paper. She opened it carefully. Only 6 words had been written across the page. "When the mesa speaks, follow the water." Maria read it twice, then a 3rd time. The handwriting looked familiar. She couldn't explain why. She carried the paper closer to the flashlight. At the bottom was a small letter, E. Evelyn, her grandmother. Maria's pulse quickened. She looked around the abandoned store, the old shelves, the broken register, the boarded windows. None of it looked valuable, yet someone had hidden a key beneath the floor, and her grandmother had left a message behind. Maria slipped both objects into her pocket. Then she heard Noah crying from the other room. "Mommy?" She hurried toward him. "What happened?" He pointed toward the back wall. "I heard somebody walking." Maria turned toward the darkness. For several seconds, she heard nothing. Then came a soft scrape from behind the wall. Once. Twice. Maria slowly raised the flashlight. Whatever her grandmother had hidden here, it wasn't buried by accident, and someone, or something, had just moved behind the wall. Maria barely slept. By morning, she had convinced herself the sound behind the wall had been caused by shifting wood or desert rats. There was a simpler explanation for everything. There had to be. She spent the morning trying to make the general store livable. She found an old metal bucket behind the counter and used it to collect water from a shallow hand pump outside. The pump worked only after several hard pulls, but rusty water eventually gave way to something clear. It wasn't much. Still, it gave the children enough to drink. Around 11, Maria heard an engine. A black Chevrolet Tahoe stopped beside the store. A man stepped out wearing dusty work boots and an expensive watch. He looked to be in his early 40s. Maria Bennett? Yes. Caleb Mercer. The surname caught her attention. Mercer Sons. He noticed her looking at the old store sign. My grandfather owned this place. Maria folded her arms. What do you want? Caleb smiled politely. To make your life easier. He pulled a manila folder from beneath his arm. I know you're in a difficult situation. Your husband told a few people what happened. Maria's face tightened. You've spoken to Daniel? Briefly. That bothered her. How? Caleb ignored the question. Black Mesa isn't worth what the county says. It's remote, there's no utilities, and the access road is practically useless, but I have a development project nearby. He opened the folder. I can offer you $18,500 cash. Maria stared at the number. $18,500. It was more than twice the county's estimate. For several seconds, she imagined what it could do. 3 months of rent, food, a reliable used car, school clothes for the children, maybe enough to start over. Caleb watched her carefully. I need an answer by Friday. Why Friday? My investors are closing financing on Monday. I already paid $75,000 toward the project, and the contract requires me to secure the remaining parcels before the deadline. Maria looked at the paperwork. What happens if I don't sell? I lose the deal. There was no anger in his voice, just pressure. Maria almost felt sorry for him. Then she remembered the brass key in her pocket and the message. When the mesa speaks, follow the water. No, she said. Caleb's smile disappeared. You should think about this. I have. You have 2 children. Maria's expression hardened. I know. I wasn't threatening you. You didn't need to. Caleb closed the folder. He stepped toward his vehicle, then stopped. My grandfather spent years trying to buy this property. Maria looked up. Why? Caleb stared at the ruined buildings. Because he believed your family had something that belonged to his. Then he got into the Tahoe. Before driving away, he lowered the window. Some things are better left buried, Maria. The SUV disappeared into the dust. Maria stood alone outside the store. $18,500 was still written on the offer. But now she understood something. Caleb hadn't come because the property was worthless. He had come because he was afraid it wasn't. That evening, Maria moved the brass key from her pocket to the inside of her shoe. She didn't trust anyone anymore. Not Daniel, not Caleb Mercer. And certainly not the people who had spent decades calling Black Mesa worthless. After dinner, she took Lily and Noah outside while the air cooled. They sat beneath the rusted water tower, sharing the last of the crackers. For a few minutes, everything was quiet. Then Lily pointed toward the road. Mom? Maria looked. A set of tire tracks crossed the sand. Fresh ones. They hadn't been there that morning. Maria stood. Stay here. She walked toward the general store. The front door was open. She was certain she'd closed it. Maria stopped several feet away. The padlock she had attached that afternoon lay broken on the ground. Her stomach tightened. She grabbed a piece of broken wood and stepped inside. Nothing appeared missing at first. Then she noticed the probate papers. They were gone. Maria searched the counter. Nothing. She checked her backpack. The papers were still there. She had forgotten she had moved them earlier, but something else was missing. The yellowed note. When the mesa speaks, follow the water. Someone had taken it. Maria's breathing became shallow. She searched the floor. The small compartment beneath the counter was open. The brass key was still inside her shoe. Whoever entered the store had been looking for the same thing. She locked the children inside the old office and stayed awake until morning. At sunrise, she drove to town with Ruth. The older woman listened without interrupting. When Maria finished, Ruth sighed. Should have known. Known what? Ruth removed the toothpick from her mouth. Mercers never stopped looking. Maria stared at her. Looking for what? Ruth shook her head. Not my story. You said my grandmother came here. I did. And now someone broke into the store. Ruth looked through the windshield. Your grandmother wasn't searching for gold. Maria waited. What was she searching for? Ruth finally turned toward her. Records. What records? Land records, mine records, things that disappear when people have enough money. She reached into the glove compartment and pulled out an old photograph. The picture showed several men standing beside the Black Mesa mine in 1956. Ruth tapped one man near the center. That's Everett Bennett. Maria's eyes widened. Her great-grandfather. Beside him stood a younger man wearing a Mercer Company badge. Ruth lowered her voice. Everett claimed the mine had struck something valuable. What? He wouldn't say. Then what happened? Ruth put the photograph away. 2 years later, Everett was dead. Maria stared at her. An accident? Ruth nodded slowly. That's what they called it. Back at Black Mesa, Maria returned to the general store. She examined the photograph again. There, behind the men, was the same crooked symbol carved into the wall. The circle. 3 lines. Her grandmother hadn't left that symbol by accident, and now Maria knew where to look next. Maria waited until the children were asleep before returning to the back wall. The symbol from the photograph was carved into the wood beside a section that looked slightly darker than the rest. She pressed her palm against it. Nothing happened. Then she remembered Ruth's words. Records. Maria searched the shelves. Behind an old stack of ledgers, she found a rusted metal hook attached to the wall. She pulled it. A section of wood shifted inward. Maria stepped back. A narrow opening appeared behind the shelves. Cold air touched her face. She grabbed her flashlight. Mommy? Maria turned. Lily stood in the doorway, rubbing her eyes. Go back to bed. But where are you going? Just looking around? Lily stared at the dark opening. Don't go alone. Maria almost laughed. You're 8. So? Maria kissed her forehead. I'll be back in a minute. She crawled through the opening. The passage dropped steeply beneath the store. The walls were reinforced with old wooden beams. Rusted pipes ran along one side. Every few feet, Maria found the same symbol painted in faded black. Circle. 3 lines. The tunnel eventually opened into a chamber. In the center sat a stone cistern. Maria remembered the message. Follow the water. She examined the cistern. It was dry except for a shallow pool at the bottom. Beside it was a narrow iron door. The brass key fit. Maria turned it. Click. The door opened. Beyond it was another passage. This one was much older. The air smelled of wet stone and metal. Maria followed the tunnel until she reached a wooden table. On it were several metal boxes covered with dust. She opened the first. Mining reports. The second contained property maps. The third held photographs. Maria's hands began to shake. The mine hadn't closed in 1958 because it was empty. One geological survey showed a thick vein beneath Black Mesa. Someone had written across the report in red pencil, "Do not file." Maria opened another folder. Inside were property transfers. Families had sold their land for hundreds of dollars. Some signatures were marked with X's. Others looked copied. Then she found a ledger. The numbers were enormous. Payments had been made to a private company in Nevada. The company had quietly purchased mineral rights surrounding Black Mesa. Maria turned another page. A name appeared again and again. Samuel Mercer, Caleb's grandfather. She heard something behind her. A scrape. Maria froze. The tunnel was silent. Then came footsteps. Slow. Heavy. Someone was inside the passage. Maria grabbed the nearest metal box and switched off her flashlight. The footsteps stopped outside the chamber. A man's voice echoed through the darkness. Maria. Her blood ran cold. She knew that voice. Daniel. He stepped into the chamber. You really should have taken the 18,000. Maria backed toward the second passage. Daniel looked at the documents on the table. You have no idea what you've found. Maria tightened her grip on the box. Then tell me. Daniel's expression changed. I can't. Why? He looked toward the tunnel behind her. Because they're watching. Maria heard another sound above them. A vehicle door slammed somewhere near the store. Daniel whispered one final sentence. You weren't abandoned out here by accident. Maria didn't move. Daniel stood across the underground chamber, breathing hard. For months, she had imagined what she would say if she ever caught him lying to her again. Now she couldn't find the words. Who sent you? She asked. Daniel looked down. I was told to find the records. By Caleb? He didn't answer. Daniel. Caleb's not the one you should be worried about. A vehicle door slammed somewhere above them. Daniel flinched. Then he backed toward the tunnel. I shouldn't have left you here. Maria almost laughed. You abandoned your children in the desert. I know. No, you don't. His eyes filled with shame. I thought they'd hurt all of us. Who? Daniel looked at the documents. The people who have been protecting that mine for 60 years. Then he disappeared into the passage. Maria waited several seconds before following. He was gone. But something had changed. She no longer believed the ghost town was simply an inheritance. Someone had wanted her here, and someone had been afraid she would find these records. Maria returned to the chamber and opened every box. Near the bottom of the last one, she found a narrow wooden case. Her name was written across its lid. Maria Bennett. Her hands trembled. Inside was a sealed envelope. The handwriting was unmistakable. Her grandmother, Evelyn. Maria sat on the stone floor and opened it. The letter began simply. Maria, if you are reading this, then Black Mesa has finally found its way back to a Bennett. Maria stopped. Her eyes burned. She continued. I wanted to tell you everything when you were young. I didn't because I was afraid. Not for myself. For you. Your great-grandfather Everett discovered the richest mineral vein ever found in this part of Arizona. But before he could develop it, Samuel Mercer and his partners came to him with an offer. Everett refused. After that, the pressure started. They bought families out. They changed survey numbers. They buried reports. When Everett still refused to sell, he died in what the sheriff called a mining accident. Maria covered her mouth. The next lines were harder to read. Your grandfather was terrified. He signed away almost everything. But Everett had already protected one thing. The original land claim. He placed it in a trust connected to our family line. Maria looked at the documents beside her. I kept the evidence hidden because the Mercers never stopped searching for it. I knew one day they would come back. I chose you because you never measured a person's worth by money. I watched you struggle. I watched you put your children before yourself. I knew that if this truth ever reached you, you would understand what Everett was really trying to protect. The final paragraph made Maria cry. Black Mesa was never meant to make you rich. It was meant to give you back what our family was forced to surrender. Do not sell it. And when they come for the land, make them prove their story in public. Maria lowered the letter. For the first time since Daniel drove away, she wasn't thinking about surviving another week. She was thinking about something much larger. She gathered the original deeds, geological reports, payment ledgers, and her grandmother's letter. Then she whispered the only promise she could make. They're not taking this again. Maria spent the next 2 days turning the underground chamber into an evidence room. She photographed every document with her phone. She made copies. She wrote dates and names on separate sheets of paper. Then she called an attorney in Tucson who specialized in mineral rights and probate disputes. His name was Thomas Reed. At first he sounded skeptical. "Mrs. Bennett, you're telling me an abandoned mining town may contain disputed mineral rights dating back to 1956? "Yes." "And you have the original documents?" "I believe so." There was a pause. "Don't give anyone those papers. Don't sell anything. And don't leave that property until we establish exactly what you inherited." For the first time, Maria felt she wasn't completely alone. Thomas spent hours reviewing photographs of the records. Then he called back. "Maria, I need you to listen carefully." She sat at the old general store counter while Lily colored beside her. "What?" "The county valuation means almost nothing if these documents are authentic." Maria looked toward the desert. "How much could it be worth?" "I don't know yet." "Millions?" Another pause. "Yes." The word barely sounded real. Thomas discovered that Everett Bennett's original mineral claim had never been properly cancelled. Instead, the Mercer-controlled company had filed a series of transfers using questionable signatures. The problem was that several of those transfers had later been used to secure loans. That meant the Mercers couldn't simply walk away. They had built an entire financial chain around land they might never have legally owned. Then Thomas found something worse. A payment ledger showed Samuel Mercer had paid a county official $12,000 in 1958. Another payment went to a surveyor. Another to a sheriff's deputy. Beside the final payment was a handwritten note. "Accident closed. Claims clean." Maria stared at the words. Everett's death hadn't simply been an old tragedy. Someone had arranged for questions about it to disappear. That afternoon, Caleb arrived. This time, he wasn't smiling. "You've spoken to a lawyer?" Maria stood in the doorway. "Yes." Caleb looked toward the old store. "My grandfather made mistakes." "He murdered my great-grandfather?" "I didn't say that." "You didn't have to." Caleb's jaw tightened. "My development company has already committed millions based on those mineral rights." Maria stared at him. "So that's why you need my land." "I'm trying to prevent a financial disaster. For yourself. For hundreds of employees." His voice cracked slightly. For the first time, Maria saw the pressure behind his anger. But she didn't step aside. Caleb reached into his jacket. He placed a cashier's check on the counter. $250,000. Maria looked at it. "That wasn't your first offer." "No." "You knew." Caleb nodded. "I knew enough." Maria pushed the check back. "Then you knew this was never worth $7,500. Caleb picked it up. "You have no idea what you're starting." Maria looked at the old photograph of Everett hanging above the counter. "Yes," she said quietly. "I think I finally do." Thomas Reed arrived at Black Mesa the following morning with 2 boxes of legal files and a look Maria had never seen on his face before. "This is bigger than I thought." They sat inside the general store while Lily and Noah played quietly near the front window. Thomas spread the documents across the counter. The original land claim is valid enough to challenge every transfer that followed it. But there's one problem. Maria waited. We need proof that Everett never voluntarily surrendered the mineral rights. Maria placed Evelyn's letter on the table. This isn't enough? It helps. A lot. He pointed toward the final page. But your grandmother mentioned something called the Bennett Trust. I need to know where that trust was recorded. Maria remembered the wooden case. She remembered the brass key. Then she remembered the sentence, "Follow the water." She looked toward the back wall. The cistern. Thomas followed her underground. They searched the stone chamber for nearly an hour. Nothing. Then Noah, who had followed them despite being told to stay upstairs, pointed toward a pipe. "Mommy, why is that one different?" Maria crouched beside it. The pipe was newer than the others. She tapped it. Hollow. Thomas found a loose bolt. Behind it was a narrow metal tube. Inside was another document. The Bennett Trust Agreement. Thomas unfolded it carefully. His expression changed. "Maria." "What?" "This names you as the surviving beneficiary." She stared at him. "Why me?" Thomas turned the page. "Because Evelyn amended the trust in 2019. Maria's heart stopped. She remembered that year. Her grandmother had visited her apartment. Maria had been pregnant with Noah. Money had been tight. Evelyn had brought groceries and stayed for dinner. Before leaving, she'd hugged Maria unusually hard. "You're stronger than you think," Evelyn had said. Maria had assumed it was just something grandmothers said. Now she understood. Evelyn had she had been preparing for this. Thomas looked at the geological report. "There's something else." He pointed to a survey map. The mineral deposit beneath Black Mesa extended beyond the original mine, far beyond it. The estimated recoverable value based on modern prices was enormous. Thomas calculated conservatively. $4.8 million. Maria stared at him. 4,800,000. The number felt absurd beside the grocery receipts still tucked inside her purse. Thomas gathered the papers. "You have a legal case." Maria looked at the children. Lily was showing Noah a drawing of the ghost town. There was a bright yellow sun over the ruined buildings. Maria smiled faintly. Her grandmother hadn't chosen her because she was desperate. She had chosen her because she trusted her. Thomas closed the folder. "We need to take this before a judge." Maria nodded. Then she looked once more at Evelyn's letter. The final line suddenly carried a different meaning. "When they come for the land, make them prove their story in public." Maria folded the letter carefully. They're going to get their hearing, and this time, she wouldn't be the woman standing outside the door with nothing. The probate hearing was held on September 14, 2026, inside the old Pima County Courthouse. Maria arrived before sunrise. She wore the only navy dress she owned. Thomas carried 3 boxes of documents. Behind them sat Ruth Calder, Lily, and Noah. Across the courtroom, Caleb Mercer sat beside 2 attorneys. He looked confident. Until Thomas placed the original Bennett Trust Agreement on the evidence table. The room became quiet. The judge examined the document. "Where was this found?" "Inside a concealed compartment beneath Black Mesa," Thomas replied. Caleb's attorney stood. "Your Honor, we dispute the authenticity." Thomas nodded. "That is why we brought the county archivist." A grey-haired woman entered with a stack of historical records. She confirmed the paper, ink, filing marks, and registration number. The trust was genuine. Then Thomas presented Everett Bennett's original mining claim. Next came the geological survey, then the payment ledger. Finally, he placed the photograph of the 1956 mine crew before the court. The judge studied it. Thomas pointed to Samuel Mercer. Mr. Mercer's grandfather acquired surrounding properties shortly after this photograph was taken. How many? 23 parcels. And how much did the families receive? Thomas opened the ledger. An average of $410 per parcel. A murmur moved through the courtroom. Caleb shifted in his chair. Thomas continued. Modern geological testing confirms that the mineral formation identified by Everett Bennett extends beneath the disputed land. Caleb's attorney objected. The judge overruled him. Then came the document that changed everything. The 1958 payment ledger. Beside a $12,000 payment to a county official were 5 words. Accident closed. Claims clean. Maria looked toward Caleb. He wasn't angry anymore. He looked exhausted. Thomas turned toward the judge. Your Honor, the evidence indicates that Everett Bennett's death was followed by fraudulent transfers designed to conceal his mineral discovery. Those transfers were later used to obtain financing and development rights. The judge reviewed the documents for several minutes. Then she looked directly at Maria. Mrs. Bennett, the court recognizes you as the lawful beneficiary of the Bennett Trust and orders the disputed transfers placed under review. Maria's hands trembled. The final valuation had been completed the previous week, $4.8 million, not $7,500, not $18,500. Not even the $250,000 check Caleb had offered. $4.8 million in recoverable land and mineral rights. Caleb finally stood. Maria. She looked at him. I can still make this right. She remembered him telling her some things were better left buried. She remembered Daniel driving away. She remembered Lily asking if they were going home. Maria shook her head. You had 68 years to make it right. Caleb lowered his eyes. The judge ordered an independent investigation into the historical transfers. Outside the courthouse, reporters gathered. Maria ignored the cameras. She took Lily's hand. Noah grabbed her other one. For the first time, she didn't feel like she was escaping something. She was walking towards something that finally belonged to them. Maria didn't sell Black Mesa. That surprised everyone. The first thing she did was buy a reliable house in town for $286,000. It had 3 bedrooms, a small backyard, and a kitchen with windows that faced the mountains. Lily chose the room with the morning sunlight. Noah chose the one closest to the stairs. Maria chose the smallest room for herself. For the first time in years, she didn't have to calculate whether the electricity bill would leave enough money for dinner. But she refused to let Black Mesa become another empty property. With part of the recovered inheritance, she hired engineers to stabilize the old buildings. The general store was restored. The water tower was repaired. The old church received a new roof. She preserved the original mining tunnel exactly as it had been found and donated the historical records to the county archive. A small visitor center eventually opened beside the settlement. On the wall inside hung the photograph of Everett Bennett and the other miners. Below it was a simple plaque. The Bennett family. Property restored. History preserved. Maria never used the place to glorify herself. She created a small fund for families facing eviction and emergency housing costs. Ruth became one of its first advisors. She still arrived at meetings with a toothpick between her teeth. Don't make this fancy, Ruth would say. People don't need fancy. Maria always smiled. Daniel tried to contact her twice. The first message was 6 lines long. The second was only 3 words. I miss you. Maria never answered. Her relatives eventually called too. People who had ignored her suddenly remembered childhood dinners, birthdays, old family jokes. Maria didn't hate them. She simply didn't need them anymore. One October evening, months after the courthouse ruling, Maria drove Lily and Noah to Black Mesa. The desert was quiet. The restored general store smelled of fresh wood. Noah ran outside Watuamon with a flashlight while Lily climbed the old wooden steps. "Mom!" Maria looked up. Lily was holding the photograph. "Where should I put this?" Maria took it from her. She walked inside and placed it on the wall above the original counter, the same counter where she'd once counted crackers, the same place where Caleb had offered her $18,500, the same building where she had once wondered whether she could keep her children safe. Now warm electric lights filled the room. Outside, the water tower no longer rusted. A soft breeze moved through the open windows. Maria stood beside her children and looked at Everett's photograph. Her grandmother had left her more than land. She had left her the truth. And perhaps that was why Maria had never really needed the ghost town to become valuable. She had needed it to become hers. Later that night, Lily and Noah slept in a small restored room overlooking the desert. Maria checked on them before turning off the light. Noah was curled beneath a thick blanket. Lily had fallen asleep, holding a library book. Maria closed the door halfway. Then she stood in the hallway for a moment, listening to the quiet house. No engine pulling away, no unpaid bill waiting on the table, no locked door behind which someone was deciding her future. Just her children breathing safely in the next room. Outside, the old ghost town remained beneath the stars. Dead to the people who had abandoned it. Alive to the family that finally came home.